Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone for the 6th of October. Happy birthday to my sister Elizabeth. 2013, episode number 259. Today on the show we're going to kick off with the welcome return of Dr. Rachie Reports. Dr. Rachie is going to be telling us all about the very important paper she has co-authored all about motor neuron disease. It's fascinating. And it really brings home the fact to me that Dr. Rachie is a world-class scientist. And we've got the likes of the anti-vaccination crowd pouring scorn on Dr. Rachie. Wow. Okay, anti-vaxxers, you come up with the scientific paper of this caliber and maybe people will listen to you. Then again. And after Dr. Rachie Report, Dr. Rachie's back straight away interviewing Warren Bonnet from Embiggen Books in Melbourne. Dr. Rachie was in Melbourne recently to launch The Explainer from the Conversation website. She's one of the authors of this new book. A link to the book in the show notes, or if you just Google The Explainer, The Conversation, you're sure to find it. So we'll hear her interview of Warren Bonnet, and then we'll hear a little bit from Dr. Mick Vagg and Dr. Rachie as they help launch the book there in Melbourne. After that, we have an important message from Susan Gerbic from the Guerrilla Skepticism campaign. Thanks, Susan, for sending that along to me. And then we have one from the archives, and I'll explain why in a moment. I was on Radio 2UE here in Sydney some time ago. I'm not even sure when it was, maybe 8 years ago, talking about the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival. But, you know, when I listened to my own interview back, still relevant today. So one from the archives, me on radio talking about the Mind, Body, Wallet Festival. Then to wrap up the show, it's a week in science with our good friends from the Royal Institution of Australia, www.riaus.org.au. And you can meet Dr. Paul Willis from the Royal Institution and a week in science at the upcoming National Australian Skeptics Convention in Canberra on the 22nd to 24th of November. Latest news is I think there's about, hopefully, some tickets left. There are some tickets left, but not many. They've done a wonderful job there. It's almost completely gone. All the tickets are almost sold out. If you're going to get a ticket, now's the time to get it. And just a couple of announcements. Wollongong Skeptics in the Pub. Wollongong Skeptics in the Pub. They've been around for about 14 months now, and they meet on the last Thursday of each month. If you're in the Wollongong area, hey, why not go along? Find out more by visiting their meetup site, which is meetup.com, Wollongong-skeptics-in-the-pub. Or I guess if you just Google Wollongong Skeptics in the Pub, you should be able to find out more. I might try and make that myself. That sounds like great fun. My mum lives down in that area, so why not? Wollongong Skeptics in the Pub, last Thursday of each month. And those people who are listening around the world, Wollongong is just south of Sydney. Run to Google Maps or Apple Maps and have a look. And also, if you want to help Maynard, from Maynard's Spooky Action, you can contribute to Maynard's Hotel Room. Sounds a bit suspicious, but there you go. We're hoping to raise $380. Not much. We've already kicked it off. We've already got some money in there. If you go to www.skepticzone.tv, you can see Maynard's thermometer. This is getting worse. And how that's progressing. And you can chip in. You can buy us a round of drinks. You'll see the link there. It would really help. And if Maynard can get down there to stay in Canberra for the National Convention, he'll be bringing you many interesting hours of reports and insights. So if you can help contribute to Maynard's Hotel Room, we'd all really appreciate that. Now, I had hoped to bring you more information about the chiropractors this week. Chiropractors in the news, links to reports of chiropractor breaking a baby's neck and stinking in the hospitals and all that sort of stuff. But keep listening right to the end of the show and you'll understand why this week has been a little bit unusual. And maybe not the happiest of weeks. But never mind, for now, I'm going to have a nice glass of lemon lime and bitters while you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
Now it's time for Dr. Rachie Reports with Dr. Rachel Dunlop.
Hello listeners and welcome to Dr. Rachie Reports. Well, I haven't done a report for a while on the zone and there's a reason for that and I'm going to explain that to you in a moment. I've actually been a little bit busy doing science. We've recently had a paper published in my group. My area of research is motor neuron disease, which is also known as amyotrophic lateral sclerosis or Lou Gehrig's disease. I'm going to refer to it throughout this report as ALS for the sake of not getting confused or mixing up my words. But this week we had a very big publication accepted and published in the online journal PLOS ONE. And I'm going to give you today a short summary about the background to that research and also describe the significance of this finding for people with ALS. So scientists have known for some time now that exposure to blue-green algae is linked to an increased incidence of several neurodegenerative diseases. But the reason for the link has been a mystery until now. Research published in the journal PLOS ONE on September the 25th may have the answer. An algal toxin called BMAA has been long associated with the increased incidence of a motor neuron disease called ALS. But for many years, the hypothesis suffered repeated blows as skeptics poked at the gaping hole in the theory, and that was a lack of a plausible mechanism. But now a team of cell biologists and ethnobotanists based in both Australia and Wyoming in the United States, including myself, have revealed that BMAA mimics an amino acid that our bodies naturally use to make proteins called L-serine. Mistaking the toxin for this amino acid, L-serine, means the body incorporates the toxin into human proteins, rendering them harmful. Now, because people can have low levels of exposure to BMAA over long periods, it can take between 10 to 15 years before symptoms of ALS appear. But the time from diagnosis to death can be as short as 3 years. So this, interestingly, has something to do with Guam in the Pacific Ocean and fruit bats, and I'm going to explain why. So BMAA, the algal toxin, was first identified over 40 years ago, but was not linked to disease until ethnobotanist and my collaborator, Dr. Paul Cox, descended into the jungles of the Pacific island of Guam. What he was searching for was the causes of a devastating neurological disease, which was known as amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Parkinson's dementia-like complex, or ALS-PDC, which had killed nearly half of the adult Indigenous population known as the Chamorros. Now, although about 20 genes have now been linked to ALS, around 90% of cases are of unknown cause and there's no cure. So predictably, a search for a genetic cause on Guam quickly reached a dead end. But the trip was not wasted. Dr. Paul Cox noted that, like Australian Aboriginals, the Chamorros relied heavily on the seeds of the cycad palm to make flour for tortillas and dumplings. And also, like their Australian counterparts, they knew the unwashed flour contained a poison of some description, so they washed the flour thoroughly before use. Cox and his colleague Dr. Sandra Bannack, who was also on this paper, found a neurotoxin in the flour, but it was in such low quantities that locals would need to consume over 1 ton of the flour before they could possibly get sick. So this left the hypothesis up in the air. But also of interest to Cox and Bannack was that the Chamorros had a voracious appetite for fruit bat coconut soup, a delicacy described by the locals as like nothing you've ever tasted. The bats also ate the cycad seeds, but curiously they had what appeared to be exorbitantly high levels of BMAA for what they had consumed. And an analysis of their tissue found that BMAA stuck to their proteins, enabling it to concentrate in their flesh. So when the Chamorros ate the bats, they got a huge dose of BMAA. Now, this process is now termed bioconcentration and has been observed in shellfish, crustaceans and sharks. But then how is this linked to neurodegeneration? Well, BMAA has been found in the brain tissue of ALS-PDC patients from Guam, as well as Alzheimer's patients from North America, and other populations that also consume cycad flower, including people who live on the Key Peninsula of Japan and Western Papua New Guinea, have also experienced clusters of ALS. An elegant Google Maps analysis of New Hampshire in the United States also tracked ALS patients to having lived by lakes or other bodies of water that were subject to frequent algal blooms. And the hypothesis behind this was they were actually inhaling the toxin because people who lived downwind of the lakes had even higher levels of ALS. So just because it's natural doesn't mean it's safe. And the idea that non-human amino acids, in other words, amino acids that come from plants, can cause disease is not a new one. Indeed, plants make thousands of amino acid mimics that have been linked to human and animal diseases for decades. Neurolatherism, for example, is a permanent paralytic condition that predominantly occurs in famine-affected areas and is caused by an unusual amino acid known as ODAP. Further, in our lab, we've spent more than 10 years looking at the drug used in Parkinson's disease called levodopa or L-dopa. It's very similar to the human amino acid that we use in our own proteins called tyrosine. Unlike BMAA, L-dopa can also be misincorporated or accidentally inserted into our proteins. And also like BMAA, the resulting proteins do not fold correctly. They build up as junk inside the cell over time, eventually choking the cell and sending it into programmed cell death or suicide, which is known as apoptosis. Importantly, cell suicide induced by misfolded proteins is now known to occur in a variety of neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and importantly in ALS. So what's this got to do with blue-green algae and bats? After all, who in Australia or in most of the Western world eats fruit bats? Well, let's go back to blue-green algae for a moment. The size and frequency of algal blooms, which typically appear as a green carpet on the surface of lakes and rivers, is increasing with rising water temperatures and with an excessive richness in nutrients in bodies of water such as lakes. And this is caused by overflow or runoff from agriculture and farming. Or if you want to get technical, eutrophication. Indeed, Australia is the proud owner of the largest freshwater algal bloom in the world, which occurred in the summer of 1991-92, covering 1,200 kilometres of the Barwon-Murray Basin. But you may ask, if it's true that we're all being exposed to BMAA to some degree, then why do we not all have ALS? Well, this is a very good question and a very important one. With an incidence rate of about 1 in 100,000, ALS is relatively rare, and exposure to BMAA obviously alone does not appear to be sufficient to cause disease. Like many illnesses, it's likely that ALS is a multifactorial condition requiring several factors to come together to trigger the disease. Research now is beginning to point the finger at the role of poorly functioning recycling and refolding machinery in our cells, but obviously also there's likely a role for genes and other forms of susceptibility as yet unidentified. So in summary, BMAA might be just one factor in this devastating disease, but at least we now know how it might be causing toxicity. We know it's swapping out a human amino acid for a plant amino acid. And because we have evidence for a role for BMAA replacing L-serine, these findings might go some way to developing a therapy. And that is something for patients, many of whom have nothing. If you'd like to read the full paper that's related to this study that was published on the 25th of September, you can Google PLOS1 and Dunlop, RA for Rachel Ann, and you'll find it. I'd also just like to mention that this research received massive mainstream media coverage in Australia and internationally. Indeed, it actually went viral, eventually being posted on the IFLS Facebook page, which has over 7.1 million likes. I'd like to send a special thanks to everyone who took interest in this research and covered it on their radio stations, TV, blogs, or wherever else. As a result of that, it looks like we may be able to get some funding to continue it next year. 2 weeks ago, it seemed very unlikely that that would happen. Science for the win. And until next time, this has been Dr. Rachie Reports. Okay, so I'm here in Melbourne today at the launch of The Explainer, which is a book put together by The Conversation and CSIRO Publishing. And I'm in the back corner of Embiggen Books here in Melbourne with the owner, Warren Bonnet. Hi, Warren.
Hello, hello.
And thanks for putting on this launch today. Tell us a little bit about what you focus on in the bookstore, Embiggen Books.
Well, we've got a very big focus on science and philosophy, with the overall intention to get more science information out there and critical thinking. And this book, The Explainer, that has been put out by CSIRO Publishing and The Conversation, is perfect for us. It really fills a gap that we haven't been able to fill before, so it's just perfect for us, and I desperately wanted to do it.
So there's probably there's tons of authors in there. I'm one of them. Mick Vagg, Dr. Mick Vagg, who's also here today, is another one. It looks at things that explains simple things that people might not know, like why is the sky blue or how do vaccines work. But it's all written in short chapters, so people could even read it in the bathroom if they want, couldn't they?
Yes, yeah. Or on short public transport trips and all. It's great. These short chapters enable people to not get bogged down and stuff and not be overfaced by things, and they can take it further from there with particular things that they get interested in. And we do get asked for books specifically saying, I want books that sort of, it explains stuff, general sort of science book, old-fashioned sort of thing, And so we get asked that a fair bit, and mostly the books that fill that are either aimed at kids or very quirky, and that have that humorous kind of style to it, which is fine, but it doesn't appeal to a lot of people out there. So it's good to have something that just seems, it does take itself a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, and the wealth of talent in there is something you wouldn't normally find in one book, because these people are all academics, some with very high specialties, writing for a lay audience, so it's quite unique in that sense too, isn't it?
It is. Over 70 contributors, I think, which is amazing, really. Getting that into a coherent format is hard work.
Yeah.
So they've done a great job with it, and I hope it goes on. I hope that it's successful enough that there's another and another.
Yeah, well, the format is such that you could easily continue doing this, couldn't you? And it's also convenient because it's a nice stocking stuffer for Christmas.
Indeed it is. Hint, hint.
And it's only $20.
That's right. I mean, it's just fabulous. And CSIRO Publishing, who have published it, have done a great job with it. It's a nice production as well, which is good. It shows respect for the subject.
Yeah. Well, thanks for organising the launch today, Warren, and I hope that you sell out and that you have to get in more stock. And I certainly plan to buy some copies, even though I'm in it.
Very good. And me too, in fact.
Good. Thanks, Warren.
Thank you.
I think a lot of opportunities have come my way as a result of this. I've been on ABC TV, I've been on lots of radio interviews, even managed to get commissioned by The Guardian to write a piece about fluoride conspiracy nutters.
How many comments are you up to on that now?
Over 500. I haven't read many of them, it's true. But I think in order to be able to give people like me a voice, which is a niche voice, but it's an incredible opportunity, and I'm just incredibly happy to be part of it. Part of being on The Conversation, though, this is just the last bit. I did have a bit of a look through at some of the best comments that people have posted, and I think the one which I'm fairly happy with is to say the only worse thing than an evangelical Christian is an evangelical scientist. Somebody said, nice to see a bit of passion presented. On the other hand, Vagg's Western-centric superior attitude is distastefully narrow. Integrative medicine has its place because conventional medicine has its limitations. Indeed, Chinese and Indian energy medicine has been practiced for thousands of years. To denigrate it may be both mistaken and racist.
Oh.
and of course the best ones are on the topic of fluoride. always gets the nutters like nothing else. One of the posts that I did referenced the website called Conspiracy Planet, and if you haven't seen it, I thoroughly recommend you check it out. But one of the comments there was, Dr. Vagg may sneer at Conspiracy Planet, but he's unable to refute their basic point. Obedience to authority has increased dramatically since World War II. Whole body scans at airports, anyone? And this seems to have mysteriously paralleled the growing practice of fluoridation. Coincidence, you may say? Well, the link is every bit as solid as the link between CO2 levels and global warming. And but my favourite one, though, was when one of the commenters was trying to point out that Townsville had recently become fluoridated, whereas most of the area around it in Queensland hadn't been. And they were quoting from the local area health service report. So fair play to them. They were trying to find sources to back up their argument, which is what we encourage in the comment section. But I did point out that further down the same document that they were trying to quote, the local area health service had in fact given its opinions as to why those people in their catchment had terrible bad health, and it was probably due to the higher than average rates of obesity, higher than average rates of older people retiring in there, and so forth and so forth. So the response to me pointing that out was this, which is my all-time favourite comment. Oh, I get it now. The whole town of Townsville is a statistical error, a placebo effect. Sorry guys, Townsville is part of a statistical deviation, not the publishable results. Dr. Vagg is saying that people in Townsville are dying because they are bogans, not because they
Is that xenophobia or racism?
I'm not even sure what that is. It's so wrong, but I don't hate Queenslanders. I don't hate people who drink fluoride, and I don't even hate the crazy commenters, because in fact the level of comment that we get on the conversation website is actually a lot above comparable websites that have sort of pinched some of the articles we've done. Particularly, I'm thinking of Mamma Mia. But anyway, and I suppose that's the most surreal thing when I started out this thing. Just to close, that I really never did think, when I began writing for the conversation and began working on these pieces, that any of them would end up on Mamma Mia. And I really didn't think that I'd actually be happy to see them end up on Mamma Mia, and that I would actually be commenting to the commenters in Mamma Mia. I never saw that in my life plan, and it's come about as a result of this website. And so I hope everyone enjoys the book and buys lots of them and puts them in all the libraries and Christmas stockings that you have coming up.
Well, I don't think I can really follow much on that, Mick. I think Mick's covered most things, but I wanted to especially acknowledge that Fron is here today. She's our editor, and she has been very patient with the both of us. I haven't written nearly as much as Mick, but I always find you very helpful and very open to my ideas, which I appreciate. I think what's important about this from a perspective as myself as a scientific researcher is it gives me the opportunity to get my work out to people that wouldn't normally read it. So particularly in the case of publishing scientific papers that are written in jargon and behind paywalls mostly, I now have an opportunity to explain that in layman's terms in a simple way. There's a huge audience just waiting to read stuff on The Conversation. And not only that, it helps me to refine my writing skills, which I think is really important. It has actually helped me to improve my scientific writing skills. Plus, you mentioned briefly, Mick, that there's an opportunity for articles to get republished in other places. And I've seen my stuff pop up on Lifehacker, SBS, all kinds of places, which is then perpetuating that audience even further. So, as scientists, we often get accused of sitting in our labs and boffing away and not telling anybody what we do. And I think that's true to some extent. I think we are guilty of that. And particularly in times like now when we're losing a lot of funding, we don't really have a justification for complaining because we don't tell people what we're doing. With this, we do. So we get an opportunity to say, look, we're not just spending taxpayers' money on stuff that you don't understand. Here's how it works and here's what we're doing. And I think that's really important for publicising science, for improving the public understanding of science, and also because outreach is becoming such an important part of what I do. When I want to get money from people, if I can say, well, here's what I've done, I'm more likely to get funding. But as you say, it can be very interesting, but a lot of the stuff that I write, which is similar to what Mick writes, does attract the conspiracy theorists. In my case, I write a lot about vaccination, or at least I have up until this point. And so those comment threads tend to get very convoluted and eventually result in people just calling each other names and saying, do you want a biscuit? Which actually got one commenter banned. Jason Brown, who's a friend of mine, was teasing an anti-vaxxer and just kept saying, do you want a biscuit? Apparently, that's against the community guidelines for comments on the conversation. So it was
maybe by the 40th time you said
yeah, so those comments got removed. But yeah, I think I'm really impressed to be in this book also because there are so many people in here who I respect and who have written some really, really great stuff, which I'm proud to give to my dad for Christmas or, other people without them having to say, what is that jargon stuff that you do? So, thanks to everyone who came. Thanks to Warren for organising today, and thanks to Fron for being here as well. And we'll sign books if you want.
Dr. Rachel Dunlop is one of Australia's foremost media commentators in matters concerning so-called alternative medicine. She has appeared on national radio and national television. Dr. Rachie is available for interviews, and you can contact her at rachel@skepticzone.tv.
Hello, Skeptic Zone listeners. This is Susan Gerbic from the Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia and Skeptic Action projects. Thought I'd drop in and give you a few updates concerning Wikipedia editors that have come from this podcast. We've seen 4 Skeptic Zone listeners join the team, 2 English editors, Luke Freeman and Caitlin, who just joined last week, Ulrich, a German editor, and Svetlana, a Russian one. Because of these people, we have greatly improved or created the Young Australian Skeptics, Australian Vaccination Network, Robert Llewellyn, Christopher Lord Monckton, The Budget of NASA, Leo Igwe, Paul Kurtz, and Cold Reading Pages. Because of all this work, these editors have also been adding to or correcting lots more smaller edits, including proofreading and supporting other team members. Not bad for a handful of editors. I've been very impressed with the Skeptic Zone podcast. The quality of activism and support of science education stands out from most other podcasts that mainly just talk about what is happening in the news. So it follows that the listeners of the Skeptic Zone would be more interested in activism and science education as well. So I really hope to hear from more of you. I want to mention just a couple more updates from the team in the last month. We released the Spanish page for Dr. Eugenie Scott and the Dutch team with several new pages, one for Lawrence Krauss, Pascal's Wager, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and the Scotsman Archie Cochrane. Our intention is not only to improve scientific skepticism on Wikipedia in all languages, but to have the backs of our spokespeople in all languages. Krauss will soon be in a movie with Dawkins called The Unbelievers, and Tyson's Cosmos series will be released in 2014. I'm hoping that the public will become enthusiastic for science and want to know more about these people. They will turn to Wikipedia, and we want to be waiting for them with well-written articles that show their involvement in our community. These are our people, and we need to have their backs. Please join us. We train and mentor. Write to us at gsowteam@gmail.com. And thank you for all your support, Skeptic Zone.
You've argued against the same woo so many times you can do it in your sleep. Quit trying to stop the nonsense one person at a time. Join Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia. Help us make sure the best skeptical information is always at everyone's fingertips. We need writers, editors, translators. We need you. And take as much or as little time as you can give us. Help us make Wikipedia as accurate as it can be, and you'll literally be helping people while you sleep. To join us or find out more, send a Facebook friend request to Susan Gerbic. That's GERBIC. Guerrilla Skepticism. The time is now.
All right, it's George and Paul on 2UE on 131332. You're welcome to give us a call anytime you like, anything at all you'd like to talk about. We're kicking off the program with a truly soul-defining story today. Mind, Body and Spirit Festival is on down at Darling Harbour. There was it was quite a good photo, very good photo, in the Sydney Morning Herald this week of all these people sitting at the tables down there having their fortunes read at $35 a pop. And apparently one woman, they say in the story, did the full hour consultation and it was $70. So apparently you sit there for about 30 minutes for about $35. I reckon it'd be cheaper to throw it in the gutter, to be quite honest.
You think it'd be cheaper for the hour, wouldn't you? You think it'd be 60 or something.
I reckon it'd be cheaper just to throw your money away and keep walking.
It would, yeah.
Anyway, we're going to talk to Richard Saunders from the Australian Skeptics about this fortune-telling and why people believe in it and how these people do it. Are you there, Richard?
Hello, good afternoon.
G'day, Richard.
Good afternoon. First of all, we must ask you how your big skeptics thing went the other week when you were trying that. Was it mass suicide with hermal remedies?
With homeopathic medicine.
Whatever, yeah.
Well, we scoffed boxes and boxes of sleeping pills, which we bought from a pharmacy, and for some reason we didn't fall asleep or feel ill. We had a bit of a sugar rush, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what to say. Was it a success or a failure? We're all still alive, so in that respect it's a successful failure.
All right, okay. You're skelly.
So what they're really doing is selling sugar to
pills.
people for about 1,000 times the price of what it should be.
And that's a good estimation. Yeah, I also bought a packet of jelly beans while I was there at the same time, and you get a lot more bang for your buck for the packet of jelly beans.
In jelly beans, yeah.
And they taste better.
Now, these people down at this mind, body and spirit thing and doing the fortune telling, the people who had their photos taken and paid their $35, they were all nodding their head and saying, yes, well, they knew all about me. And I was amazed that some of these people seem to know everything about me. How do they do that, Richard?
Well, it's strange. You should talk to me about this, because I'm getting something over the telephone at the moment from you.
Right.
And I sense that, there's someone... now, is it a colleague, maybe, who doesn't really appreciate you?
That'd be right, yeah.
Now, you just said that'd be right. You probably nodded your head.
Yeah.
And I also sense that there's a family secret down there, but I won't pry. But
Don't go there, mate. Don't go there.
Again, you're nodding. You can see where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Or they're called statements. It's a broad definition of what they are. There are a lot of statements aimed at getting you to agree with me.
Yeah.
Now, if a lady comes along for a psychic reading, one of the classic ones would be something, you look at the cards or you look at the crystal ball, you look into their eyes, and you're a nice, sympathetic person, and the person who's paid their money hasn't paid their money because they're a skeptic. They've paid their money because they fully believe they're in for a psychic reading.
Right.
So that's exactly what they expect. And if the psychic says to them something like, you are worried about something, and then pauses, that gives the person the chance to say, well, yes, you're right, I'm worried about this or I'm worried about that. And if there's no response, the psychic might say, yes, I think it's something about health. A little pause. The person can jump in. Oh, yes, my foot's going to drop off. I'm worried about something. And then they can say, but you haven't even told your husband yet. Now, can you see the scope?
Yeah, but what about, Richard, when they say something like, and your Uncle Bob, who had one leg, and died 3 months ago. Are they that specific?
No, what happens when you talk to the people afterwards, they say, how did your psychic reading go? They'll say, it was incredible. They knew all about Uncle Bob and his one leg.
Yeah.
Where in fact, when these have been recorded and played back and you actually listen to what was said, it was something like, I'm sensing an older relative here on your father's side.
And they go, oh, yeah, Uncle Bob.
Yeah, they say, Uncle Bob. and he had some problem walking. My God, he had one leg. Now, what happens is people's memories are shocking. Memory is not a good thing, and they will remember clearly the psychic saying, I can see Uncle Bob here with one leg.
Now, my mother always tells me this story, and she's now in her mid-80s, but she's always told this story about, I think it was during World War II, and she had just married my dad, and they went to one of those fortune tellers at some show, and Dad was standing just outside the tent, and the woman's reading Mum's fortune, and she looked up all of a sudden and said, who's that man out there? And she said, oh, that's my husband. And the woman said, that's it, I can't go anymore. I can't tell you anymore. And Mum has always remembered that as though there must have been some evil presence or something.
Oh.
Is that a common sort of thing they do?
I haven't heard of that one happening too much, because the last thing a lot of these people want to do is actually give somebody an unpleasant experience while giving them a reading. Yeah. They want to make it interesting and sincere and happy. And a lot of people make the mistake that these psychics down at the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival are all a bunch of con artists. It's my firm opinion that you'd be hard to find a con artist down there. What you find are sincere people who genuinely believe what they're doing.
That was my next question, Richard. Do they really?
Oh, you can read his mind, can you?
I might have powers.
I'm real, by the way. I should have made that.
Do they really honestly believe that what they're doing, they possess something different?
Sure. And it's very easy to understand why.
Why? Because they're, simple-minded?
No, not at all. What happens is somebody will come along to them for a psychic reading, and they sit down, and the person, again, as I say, they're expecting a psychic experience, so they react as if they have a psychic experience, and the person giving the reading gets only positive feedback from them, and they walk away saying, "You're wonderful, you've helped me, you saw these things." And the person can really fall for their own routine. They really believe it.
That's sad, isn't it?
Now, I heard the other day, I was listening to a radio interview, and I think it was Dr. Carl, actually, and he was saying that people who say they can see auras, the coloured auras around people, they actually have some sort of visual impairment, or there's some sort of brain condition.
Yes, that's true. I mean,
so they actually do see it, but it's not there.
Well, some people see sounds, or hear taste, or sensory confusion like that.
Yeah.
It's a very odd situation. A lot of the people in these in the New Age movement who say they can see auras around people, I really have to seriously question that. Every time it's been tested by having people stand behind partitions and they say, "Can you see the aura over the top of the partition?" And they, "Oh yes, there it is," and there's nobody there, and sort of thing. So yes, I think really medically there are some people who see some pretty strange things.
Yeah, what he seemed to be saying is that the people who say they can see, the genuine people who say they can see the aura can actually see it, but it's not actually there.
That's
it's something to do with the brain waves and their vision.
That's exactly right. Yeah. There is no, as far as we've known from all investigation, there's actually no such thing as an aura hanging around people in multicolours and energy fields.
Somebody told me once mine looked a bit purple. So.
Oh, well.
There you go.
Richard, so on a very serious note, so someone who was, say, schizophrenic or mildly schizophrenic, who did actually see things, could they, without medical help, could they interpret themselves as being a
psychic?
A psychic?
Yeah. Quite possibly. I don't know of any specific examples, but it would be something that... And then how could you blame them if they did? It'd be totally understandable.
Yeah. Now, what about these people? And we've got, fair trading and all sorts of things. They're taking $35 to read somebody's fortune. How can they prove that they're doing it? Isn't that some sort of fraud?
Well, that's a very good question. Is it some sort of fraud? If they're claiming they can have special knowledge of somebody from beyond the grave or magical insights from another dimension, which I guess that's what psychics do, then yes, they haven't been able to prove that yet. But I think the Consumer Affairs take the opinion, no, they've just got better things to do.
Sure. I would assume that if the person walked away happy...
Well, that's it.
Then
people walk away delighted.
Why? How come there's a con? It seems, as you've said,
No, but they haven't had their fortune
the
told.
skeptic's happy, and they're happy, so everyone's happy.
Well, quite honestly, when I go... I was there yesterday, and I always go to Mind, Body, Spirit. I have a great time. I love it.
I'll bet you do.
Because I learn so much. I don't go around haranguing people. I ask them, how does this work? What do you think?
Did you have your fortune told?
I've had my fortune told more times than I've had hot dinner.
And I bet every time it was different.
And I bet it was good every time.
Oh, it's wonderful every time. But when it's over, I actually sit down with the psychic or whatever and go over everything they said and point out to them what in fact was happening psychologically.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're quite...
Oh, I bet you give them a bad day.
Yeah.
Richard, I'm prepared to pay you double if you can tell me now the Moore family secret, because as you mentioned earlier, I'm quite intrigued about this.
Well, I mean...
Come on, what is it?
I mean, I can't imagine any amount of money would coax that information out of me. I'm far too discreet.
You are a true excellent answer there, Richard. Yeah. I've read some figures, and you've studied this far more than I would, of course, but I've read some figures where it's over half the population believe in this.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, people don't have the wherewithal to know. I mean, they hear about psychics and they don't know terribly much about it. But unless you're someone like sort of involved in the research side of it, like I am, then you learn about the psychology of it. Then you learn about the thousands and thousands of tests that have been done with negative results. And you learn about, sometimes, yes, there's trickery involved, like people pretending to bend spoons and whatnot. Now, an important thing is to actually show people how things work, and there's a group called Mystery Investigators, mysteryinvestigators.com, and they actually teach people how divining really works, what the physics behind walking over hot coals is. So you need to learn a little bit before you can make the comment.
I was in Bangkok recently, and at the feet of the reclining Buddha, which is just huge, they have people who tell you fortunes, old books, the whole lot, the whole outfit, and these people honestly believe what they do. They do it for a living. And this bloke told me everything that I wanted to hear.
Oh, there you go.
My lifeline was long. Everything that was true or everything you wanted to hear?
I don't know. I hope it's true, because the lifeline was long, the money line was long.
Well, my only run-in with a palm reader, you love this one, Richard, live on radio, palm reader, and he looked at my hand, and he did the old thing about you had a dog when you were a kid, people don't appreciate you, right, and there's happiness ahead in your life. Then he looked at my hand and he said, you are about to go on a very, very long journey. And I said, my God, I said, I've just booked to go to America.
Wow.
And he said, well, there you go. When he left the studio, I realized, yes, it was about 2 weeks before Christmas. A lot of people go on long journeys just before Christmas.
That's a classic example of remembering the hits and forgetting the misses.
Good to talk to you, Richard.
Yeah, always good to talk.
No trouble, guys.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks.
Bye.
Richard Saunders from the Australian Skeptics, and if you're up for it, the Mind, Body and Spirit Festival is on at Darling Harbour. Today is the last day if you want to have your fortune told, but you'd better be quick. 1:26 with George and Paul on 2UE.
Virtual Skeptics is a weekly web show in which we discuss the latest news in skepticism.
Whether it's a new case of spontaneous human combustion, a conspiracy theory, the latest update on the upcoming robot apocalypse, tech news for skeptics, or the latest wacky religious claim, we cover it all.
We record the show live as a Google Plus on-air hangout, so join us and our host, Brian Gregory, for an hour of mostly intelligent talk every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern U.S. time.
Watch us at virtualskeptics.com and participate in the show on our hashtag #VirtualSkeptics.
The Virtual Skeptics. It's like Meet the Press, but with chupacabras.
This week in science, we saw lab-grown glands, a centipede's pain-relieving potential, and the link between stress and dementia. Plus, why is this volcano so special? It appears that early Mars may have been home to giant exploding volcanoes. Huge, irregular-shaped craters in the northern highlands of Mars may have formed a supervolcano similar to the one at Yellowstone in the United States. The rare but highly explosive eruptions of a volcano like this may have released volatile chemicals that would have changed the Martian climate and deposited volcanic materials in the region. This is also a possible source of previously unexplained fine-grained layered deposits found throughout the equatorial region of Mars. Japanese researchers have bioengineered 2 replacement organs and claim this is the next step for regenerative therapy. The team built a lacrimal gland, the tear-producing gland in the corner of the eye, and implanted it into an adult mouse with a defective gland. The replacement gland was functional after implantation, including the production of tears. They also developed a saliva gland which was functional when implanted into a mouse. This technique could be applied to other glands and represents a breakthrough in the ability to grow new, healthy glands in the lab. A patent has been approved for a method of creating so-called designer babies. However, scientists are wary of unintended implications of this patent. Women dealing with a lot of stress in middle age may increase their risk of developing dementia in later life. Pollution from diesel exhaust fumes affects the smells released by a flower, which confuses honeybees' ability to recognise them. And researchers have identified a component of centipede venom that could be developed into a painkiller as effective as morphine. This week we've got a question for you. NASA announced that Mars soil contains a surprising amount of water. Approximately, how much water can be extracted from 30 kilograms of Martian soil? Is it 250 millilitres, 500 millilitres, 750 millilitres, or 1 litre? Don't cheat by Googling. Tweet us your answer at @RI_AUS, #WeekInSci, and we'll tell you the correct answer next week. That's it for This Week in Science. We'll see you right here next week.
Hi, I'm Finn. And I'm Rebecca, and we're the Skepticons. Skepticons is an Irish podcast by the Dublin Skeptic Society. It takes a conversational, irreverent look at science, news and skeptical topics from an Irish perspective. You can find us at www.theskepticons.com.
You're always spirit with a strong finance.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Now, I'd like to play something I put in the introduction to the Skeptic Zone about 6 or 7 weeks ago. Well, that's all from me at the moment. I'm just going to stand up here, walk over to the other side of my office where... Hello, sweetie. This is Adele. Hello. And she keeps me company up here in my office sometimes. And she's rolling on her back, looking too cute for words. Yes, hello, sweetheart. There we go. Now, I thought I'd just give you a little bit of cuteness into your life, folks. What do you say, Adele? There we go. Well, you going to stay there? All right, you stay there, Adele. Lie in the sun on top of my my little wardrobe. Well, Adele made it onto that introduction because it was only just discovered that she had... cancer, in her jaw, and the lump was growing, and over the following weeks it got worse, poor little mite. She ended up on painkillers and she did wonderfully well. She was still happy and active and more or less her normal self until the time came, which was a few days ago for her. So it's been very, very sad here, I must admit. And so what I'd like you to do, if you own a little cat, can you please just give it that extra scratch under the chin? That would be really nice if you could do that. And if you own a little dog, or any animal, an extra treat, an extra pat, an extra tickle on the belly. So if thousands of animals around the world each had a little pat or a little tickle or a little extra treat, I think that would be something. And it really doesn't matter when you're listening to this, if it's 2013 or in years and years to come, if this podcast survive, why not? Give that pet an extra treat, an extra pat. And I'd like to thank some people who have been very helpful. Travis Roy, for being there on the text chat for me to pour my heart out to. Julie Ladder, who gave wonderful advice from a vet's point of view, and it was very much appreciated. Thank you, Julie. And George Hrab, who has kindly given me permission to play the following song to end off the Skeptic Zone. Until next week, this is Richard Saunders, signing off from Sydney, Australia, and bye-bye to Adele.
I don't believe in heaven, and I know that there's no hell. I don't think you've gone anywhere, and I guess that's just as well. 'Cause I want to remember the last look in your eye. It was the best and worst thing to get to say goodbye to you. They say we're not supposed to comprehend. But I want to know more. Being there with you at the end was a pain I'd hoped for. Did you know where you were going? Did you like the time you'd spent? I wish that you'd stayed longer. That's not how it went. Now I know there's no forever, but of all the hearts I've met, I think the place we ended up was as close as one could get to June. They say we're not supposed to understand. That doesn't help me. Watching you leave by my own hand were the cards that were dealt me. Some would blame the dealer, some would blame the deal, some would make up stories that never could be real. I hope when you left we're glad to be back home. I think that you knew you would never be alone. I've no need for heaven or some eternal bluff. I prefer what's real, and what we had here was enough. I'm glad I get to miss you, but that you can never miss me. Thinking you'll wake up and see us is your eternity. Small comfort. I miss you. I miss you. I love